at 31 minutes past 8 on this Monday morning. Delighted to say that Tommy Walsh is with us. Tommy, how are you getting on?
Good morning, Nolan. How are you doing?
Very well. It's a high pressure zone today, the Kilkenny Mt Rushmore. How difficult a task is this for the selectors later?
Yeah, it's going to be tough because I suppose it's a county dominated by the GA, dominated by hurling. Who are you going to leave out? Like, who are you going to put in? If it was just probably hurling, it'd be far easier. But like, you can't, I suppose, put them all in either. You have to think about the other sports because there's huge sporting legends from outside of the GA world as well. So I think the biggest difficulty will be, you know, how to get the balance right.
Well, we may as well address the elephant in the room here straight away. A Cork man over your shoulder this morning.
Oh, Christie. yeah. After everyone knows how much I would have looked up and read about this man over the year. So, yeah, he'll be there for the year himself. And do you recognise the other man with him?
I don't.
That's the great Mick Mackey from Limerick. So it was a famous photograph, one of the most iconic photographs, I suppose, ever taken in the GA. It was where Christie was going off with an injury and he was going around, say, by the back of the goal that time. And Mick Mackey, the great Limerick man, was actually an umpire. So Mick Mackey is turned around just to say something to Christie or the other way around. But the big heading, I think, for many years is, what did Mackey say to Ring, or what did Ring say to Mackey? So it's an iconic photograph, but I found it there during the COVID-19. I said I'd stick it up.
Yeah, it's class. Christie, of course, made the Cork Mt Rushmore. There was a good bit of debate around that between himself and Jimmy Barry Murphy, for example, about who would get that slot. If you're looking at hurling from a Kilkenny perspective, is there somebody who is ahead of the pack? Is there a banker here from a hurling perspective?
I have. If there's only one position on, I have it down to 6. And this isn't trying to be, and genuinely, this isn't trying to be sit on the fence on this. I think it depends purely on the era you came up in. So I have 2 coaches. If Cody, obviously, you know, he's won 11 All-Irelands, won as a coach. He's won All-Irelands as a player, All-Stars. He's won Club All-Irelands. He's won it all, you know, primary schools, titles in St. Patrick's de la Salle, has done it all, has gave everything to the game. So from this era, like, you know, he has to be within a shout, I suppose. But if you go back then, I think Enda's on later on, like, you go back to the era of the 70s and that, when there was very little coaching going on. Father Tommy Marr came about. And I know for our age group, like, we wouldn't know much about Father Tommy, but my father and that era, they would rave about Father Tommy Marr because he was coaching players when nobody really was coaching. Now we take it as, you know, we take it for granted, but Father Tommy Marr was, you know, showing guys how to hit the ball diagonal. He was showing guys how to hand pass, just all the basic skills, and by all accounts broke it down into the basics and taught him that way, and then brought it into the games. So from coaches, you have 2 just absolute heroes. And I'm sure, like, I suppose the guys that have been looking at the game for the last 15, 20 years, we're going to put Cody as a shoe-in, I suppose. But if you're talking about people that grew up during the 60s and 70s, Father Tommy Marr, I'm sure, is definitely going to be a rival to Cody there. Then the players, right? So I have it down to 4. Laurie Marr, he's from my own club, Tullaroan. Like, you have to be in a shout of being put on Mt Rushmore. If there's a museum built in honour of you, there's an All-Ireland trophy named after you. There's numerous sayings about Laurie, like over the bar says Laurie Marr, still living on maybe 80, 100 years later. The glory that was Laurie's. The front of the Tullaroan 1984 centenary book, there was only one man on it, and that was Laurie Marr. So, you know, his name from that era is definitely, I think, will be on everybody's lips. Then you go on to the 70s when Father Tommy Marr and that, you know, great Kilkenny team came along. Eddie Kerr. You know, I was talking to my uncle there the other day, Dick, huge Eddie Kerr fan, like, you know, and we were only having a discussion about it. And I think John Dial from Tipperary, you know, 8 All-Ireland medals, corner back there, and that great Tipperary team back in the 60s. I think he said Kerr was the toughest man he ever marked. So he was brilliant and tough. And that was back in an era when you had to be able to look after yourself. There was no yellow cards, there was no red cards, there was no podcasts. So, you know, no CCC. The referee was yourself, and if you didn't look after yourself, you might as well go home. So yeah, that was Kerr. Go on then to my era, looking at hurling on DJ. Like DJ was just, you nearly forget how great DJ was. Like they say that a county final back in the 90s, even now, to be roughly averaging 10,000 people would be at it. When DJ and Gorn, the Young Ireland's club, were in a county final, there was at least 15,000 people at it. They used to come down from the Glens and Antrim. They used to come from Galway, Cork, Tipperary, all over Ireland just to see DJ. And he had that kind of, exhilarating pace. He could get a goal out of nowhere. He just didn't know what he was going to do. And then on to, I suppose, our own era, if your nickname is the King, that probably tells his own story. King Henry, we used to call him Tenry when he won his 10th All-Ireland. We got rid of Henry and started calling him Tenry. So, well, David Herity, in fairness to him, came up with that nickname. I thought it was brilliant, really, and simple. But so, Henry, he's won it all, both club and county. Now he's after going on and coaching in his first 2 years, 2 senior Kilkenny championships, 2 senior club All-Irelands. And just that man was truly iconic as well. So the basis, before I let you come in there, the basis that I was kind of using was, if you think of an era, we'll say this is a sport, so we're just thinking of hurling here. If you think of an era, does a name jump up? You don't have to think about it. Does a name jump out at you? And for me, them 4 and the 2 coaches would certainly jump out.
It's an unbelievably impressive list. It's kind of deciding between them, Tommy, which is going to be such a difficult one. Like, from your vantage point, if you had to compare Henry Sheffield and DJ Carey, how would you go about doing that? And I'm not even asking who was the better player. Like, how did they differ? What was your view on that?
Yeah, well, I suppose DJ was probably the more exciting player, as in he mightn't be in the game maybe for 56. Like, he was small, but his speed and his pace were just incredible. Like, Eddie Brennan had the nickname Fast Eddie for many years. Like, DJ was even faster than Eddie Brennan. So I always thought DJ was probably the most exciting player that we've watched, because when he got the ball, he could take on 4 or 5 lads and stick the ball in the back of the net. The crowd would be on their feet. I remember in the Leinster final, Leinster could have been semi-final, let's say, around 1991. So it would be more a Leinster semi-final, I think, against Wexford. Wexford were beating us, I'd say it was by 5 pints or that. And we were going out of the grounds. I got a lift. I won't tell you who I got the lift with, but we were leaving the game early. And as we were walking down by the Sunset House, it's kind of the back of the Cusack stand, really, we heard these roars and roars and roars. But we still thought Kilkenny were bet. And next minute we were going down the road and we heard DJ was after, burying the ball in the back of the net, kick. I think he ran about 11 steps, but he scored. That's what DJ could do. He'd win a match out of nowhere for you. Then go on to Henry. Henry would be there for the 70 minutes. He kind of dragged the whole team with him, dragged the whole management. He dragged the whole place with him, just there dogging the game out of it, whether it was back in his own defence, hooking and blocking, roaring on the team, or scoring with his deft touches, or like Henry scored. Like, Henry would be known as a leader, but because in his later years he became such a leader, people nearly forget how much of a genius he was with the stick. Like, I marked him in training, and like, whether you're in front or behind him, like, he'd flick the ball or he'd have it in the back of the net before he'd even know it. So the 2 of them are geniuses, but because of Carey's speed, he was probably the most exciting player. Towards Henry was the lad that was there for the full 70 minutes, just leading the charge.
There seems to be, Tommy, as we prepare for this, some maybe questions about whether Cody will get his place on the Mt Rushmore. And he's done it as a player. He captained Kilkenny as a player, and clearly with 11 All-Irelands as a manager in any other county, he is the first name right up there. The argument, and clutching at straws here, that could be made against them is that you look at that Kilkenny side you played in, it's brimming with some of the greatest players to have ever played the game, yourself included. And that maybe because of that, I don't want to say anybody would have won those All-Irelands, but it was as much more about the players than about the manager. Like, do you see any way we can have a Kilkenny Mt Rushmore without Brian Cody being on it?
Yeah, I could. It depends. If there's only one position going to come up for grabs for, we'll say, a hurler, and that's including manager, hurler, well, then he's plenty of competition, absolutely. Was he brilliant? Is he brilliant? Yeah. Do I go along with the argument about the players? No, because there's been plenty of managers that have had great players and haven't won what he has won, like 11 All-Irelands, and how many has he got to? Like he's brought he's brought teams that didn't have the same pedigree as the glorious team he would have had from 2000 on, and he still brought them to All-Irelands, won leagues. They've remained unbelievably competitive. So I don't think you can bring that into it. The only argument you would say is, like, is he better than TJ? Is he better than Henry, Kerr, Laurie? Father, there's a huge battles there for that place. If there's two places up for grabs, I would have him in it. I wouldn't have to think about it there. I'd have him in it. But if there's only one place, no, I think, let him fight it out and let the best man win,
It's Kilkenny. There has to be more than one place for a hurling man.
Yeah, well, there's only 4 spots, now, there's GA, do you want me to talk about any other sport?
Go for it, Tommy.
Basically, it was me kind of, in my own head, I said, we can't be we can't think that we're the only ones here in Kilkenny. There is other sports, but I ended up then picking other GA sports. So Angela Downey, camogie player. When I was going to school, Breda Holmes was on that fantastic Kilkenny camogie team. They won 12 senior All-Irelands. So you'd forget things. They won 12 senior All-Irelands. They won a 7 in a row. Angela Downey was like DJ, gets the ball, takes on 3 or 4 players, puts the ball in the back of the net. Like Angela Downey, as a boy looking at hurling, she would make you want to play the game. I remember watching her playing because we had a fierce interest, because we had a local player, Breda Holmes, on that great Kilkenny team. They used to bring back the All-Irelands back to our school. She was a teacher in our school. They used to bring back the camogie trophy to our schools every year, the O'Duffy Cup, and we absolutely loved it. But Angela Downey was incredible. Like, she won 6 or 7 club All-Irelands as well on. Again, why would I put her on it? Because she just absolutely dominated her sport as far as I could see. If you're to ask any Cork player, I think Sandy Fitzgibbon was on there recently, talking to one of the newspapers, saying how she was, the greatest player that she came across. If you're talking to any hurlers, I'd say that looked at the game back in that era or in the current game, they would say Angela Downey sticks out a mile. So for me, I think Angela Downey definitely deserves a place. And if I was picking the team, she'd be on my team.
Who else then? I think Nathan was asking the question earlier on, between Angela Downey and Anne Downey, how do you put one on the pedestal?
Yeah, well, you see, Angela Downey would have been like DJ, as in Anne was a great player, played midfield, probably hitting most of the ball into Angela. They had that understanding, they knew where each other was on the field. But Anne would, you wouldn't see Anne scoring 3 or 4 goals, but she might have a lot of assists. But kind of Angela was the pin-up. She was the girl probably that stood for camogie at that time, because she was so exciting. And, you probably need, the great players, you probably need 2 players to mark them if you really want to put them out of the game. So Angela Downey, I think, was head and shoulders above all the rest, including any of the Kilkenny or Cork players, as far as I could see. Going outside of that then on, Duxie Welch. So my shoe-ins anyway, right, would be Angela, Duxie Welch. We used to go to do our gymming in Hotel Kilkenny on. Duxie Welch, no matter what time of the day you were there, Duxie was there. And I don't know what age he was at this stage. He was probably in his 40s at this stage. Duxie, I was looking at his stats there yesterday even, just so that I had him right for today. He's 38 All-Irelands. And that's just not willy-nilly All-Irelands. They're senior All-Ireland titles, singles and doubles. Now, I suppose I know it from the racquetball up in Muckleader. You have the big alley and you have the small alley. In Motel, there's a 60 by 30, and Muckleader is the 40 by 20. A huge difference. It's like playing a hurling game, I suppose, in your back garden and then going out and playing Crow Park. Like, there's a massive difference in the 2 games. He won 16 60 by 30s single titles. He won 10 doubles. He won 7 40 by 20, so the different court, the smaller court, and then won 5 doubles. So he's 38 senior All-Irelands, 7 handballer players of the year. So this man was just a giant, and I'm not sure, outside of the handball world, what people would know about this guy. But I suppose I used to meet him in the gym, and You know, I was in a handball competition. I think it was called One Wall there. It was kind of a challenge, kind of a competition there one year, and I got to know him. I was playing a bit with him that year, and like, he was incredible. Like Duxie just wanted to win. He came from the Butts here in Kilkenny. We all remember the old handball alleys. Like, he grew up in this handball alley. Like, you hear about these hurlers going up in the hurling field. Duxie grew up in the handball alleys, and there was huge handballers came out of the Butts later on, but he'd be there morning till night, as the stories would go. Myself and Tommy O'Brien then was a teacher in Kilkenny CBS. I wouldn't know Tommy through the hurling again. He was massively into the hurling, but he was this kind of coach up all along, and the two of them went everywhere. Like, Duxie would go to Cavan, he'd go to Wexford, he'd go to Cork just for a training session. Like, I think, you know, I wasn't a handballer myself, but I think the best way of training for handball is you play other guys, and there probably wasn't too many lads on the circuit, so he'd be off travelling the country. That was his commitment to the game. So, like, purely, absolutely, like 13 in a row, like, you know, he has to be on it as far as I could see. And you're wondering how do you put non-hurlers on a Kilkenny Mt Rushmore? Like, them two, I know, well, Angela is a Camogie player, like, but them two, for me, will be shoo-ins, you know.
Yeah, right. So we've got our hurlers, we've got our Camogie players, and we've got our handball players here. Outside of that, Willie Duggan's going to be in with a shout. Willie Mullins is going to be in with a shout. How much do you associate him with the county of Kilkenny, Tommy Mullins?
Yeah, Mullins just wasn't much into the horse racing myself, Owen. You'd be just kind of watching it from afar, really, but I think his stats, I suppose, speak for themselves. Like, when you think of horse racing, you think of Willie Mullins. When you go to Chelsea, you know, like, he's just winning everything, like, you know. So, you know, we're hugely proud of him, obviously. But I suppose hopefully there's someone on later on the show that will know more about horse racing than I would. But from a non-hurling perspective, his name stands out, absolutely.
We never asked you, if you had to pick one of the backs from the great Kilkenny teams, who would you go for? Like, are you not putting yourself on Mt Rushmore here, Tommy?
No, because listen, you don't get into that conversation because, you know, you might be coming across, you think you're modest and all this kind of a thing. But listen, I play geniuses. Like, I was good player on a great team. You know, I was on a great team, and I know had great times, but there was geniuses. The way I always compare these guys, you have good players, you have great players, right? But then you have these geniuses. The lads I've mentioned earlier on, the genius. There's one other player, and I played with, as I said, great players, geniuses, right? So I put Jackie Tyrrell, Mick Kavanagh, Noel Hickey, all these lads, Brian Hogan. They were all great players, right? But then we played with one genius. Outside of Kilkenny, you think of a back that was a genius. I think of Brian Whelan. But the lad that stands out, I think, above them all will be JJ Delaney. I've seen this lad and up close, and when you're up close to him, you'd even see, like, you ask any of the Kilkenny players that say of our era, or if any of the guys that marked him, Big Dan, Ben O'Connor, these lads, who's the best player they ever marked, I'd say this man will be definitely top of their list, because Cody said it a couple of years ago, I think he's the greatest defender he's ever seen. He could do it both ways. Look, we were always told the best way of stopping your man from scoring, win the ball first. JJ could do that as well. We saw his hook. He could do it on the biggest stage of all. That hook he got on Seamus Callanan in the All-Ireland 2014. A dive and a little flick. It was absolutely incredible. I seen him, our neighbours over the road, to be a small little club, Johnstown. Inspirational kind of little club, really. And, you go to like, when I say you go to remember I was saying earlier on, you go to a Gorn match just to see DJ playing. Well, we used to go to Johnstown matches to see a defender playing, see JJ Delaney, catching balls like left, right and centre. And, he was just an absolute incredible man, So as a defender, he was definitely, the best, and I wouldn't even have to think about it.
What makes a hurling genius, Tommy?
Well, the old saying, the one about talent and hard work, like hard work beats talent, and if talent doesn't work, something like that. But the way I put genius is to have both. So they have the genius of the talent, which means they have all the simple skills, so of their chosen sport, and then they have the hard work to go with it. So, you talk about Henry and JJ, and DJ, these guys. So I could practice a thing 100 times and you might start getting it. Whereas these lads would probably practice it 3 or 4 times and they just have it. They're just geniuses. Like I remember, say, Richie Power from Kilkenny. Richie Power could be injured for 6 months. Like he'd come back in his first training session, he'd flick a ball over your head and put it in the back of the net. Whereas another lad would be stumbling and falling and he'd try to get back into it that way. But the geniuses had it, but then they worked. You know, the Ronaldos, the Messis, they worked like savages to hone that skill. So that's why I would say. The other thing about a genius I would say, is they're able to do it on the biggest stage of all. Because another part of being a genius is you're able to hold your nerve. You're able to think when the time is greatest. You're as tough as, you know, you have it all really. And yeah, that's why we would call it a genius.
Well, it's
an incredibly difficult selection, like, and it goes back to what criteria, and I'll be fascinated to hear what Enda and Gary choose as their criteria, because if we're just going through medals and you talk about Angela Downey with 12 or Cody with 11 as a manager, 3 as a player, he won a Club All-Ireland as a player as well, Henry has 10, JJ has 9. But then I'm interested when you talk about DJ, because he's the other side, and the side I like of the Mount Rushmore, which is the magical, the mythical, and you describe it there in the 90s, even for people like myself from Mayo with no great hurling knowledge. Like DJ's name was known the country over, still is. You only have to say DJ and everybody knows who you're talking about. And does that elevate him above everybody else? That sort of magical, mythical side of him?
I wouldn't say it elevates him above. Like, you know, I'm sure the other players had you know, they had the same for youngsters of their era. Like, I'd say, Nathan, like if you were to talk to people in Mayo that grew up of the Eddie Carey era or the Laurie Marr era, you know, they could possibly say the very same thing about those players. But, you know, I'm sure that when you were growing up, DJ was the man. Like myself, like even as a youngster, my cousins were somewhere related to DJ, and they came back one day and they said, listen, would you like to go to DJ's house? We went out and we poked with DJ in his house when I was about 10 or 11, and I can still remember the wall, the gable end. I still remember going to the house. So I suppose, you know, if you have memories like that, you're obviously dealing with an absolute genius, like, you know. But Carey was magical. Like, and Carey was there when I was starting out in 2000. I played with him from 2002, we'll say, to 2005, and he was still a genius. Like, he came back from retiring in 2002. I'm not sure what age he would have been in 2002. But, like, he nearly turned the whole thing around. Kilkenny, they bet Wexford by a point in the Leinster final that year, or 2 points. I think it was 1917. And they were kind of stuttering along, Kilkenny. And a few of the players then got together, I think, and said, we need this man back. We need this man back if we're going to win in All-Ireland. And whether they contacted him or the management contacted him, I'm not sure. But it kind of started with that, and he came back for the All-Ireland semi-final. So imagine being out for a whole year, came back in the All-Ireland semi-final against Tipperary, and the game was in the balance. DJ got the ball around maybe 40 yards out, 45 yards out, took off on a solo run at his age now, and Tom Costello would have been chasing him, and Tom was a tough. The guys in Tipperary tell you about Tom Costello, he wouldn't, you know, he wasn't going to solo up the field and put the ball over the bar, but you get nothing soft off Tom Costello because, you know, he was a tough cornerback and tight, and he was fast, and he was after him, and DJ soloed anyway and hand passed the ball over to Jimmy Coogan, who put the ball in the back of the net. He scored a point then later on, DJ. Like, so at that age, after coming back, after being off for nearly 12 months, nearly won an All-Ireland for Kilkenny. We all remember the glorious point he got against Ollie Baker. I think we all hurt. He got one of the best points he's ever seen. He soloed, kind of gave a little shimmy to Ollie Baker. Ollie Baker slipped and fell and off. Looked simple. And you talk about what does a genius do? The biggest day of all, with a great player following you, solos the ball and off the hurl in an All-Ireland final, out underneath the Hogan stand, and glides it over the bar. It wasn't just a fluky shot. Glides it and the ball just sails over the bar. So, listen, DJ was a genius. Like,
it seems that we've whittled it down to Kerr, Marr, Cody, Shefflin, DJ and maybe JJ as well. So there's going to be plenty to sift through later on. We've got a poll up on our Twitter account at the moment about who is your banker. Brian Cody is currently leading that at the moment, with Henry Shefflin coming in second. So I dare say that we could have two positions for a male hurler anyway, at least, come our Kilkenny Mt Rushmore later on. Tommy, just before we let you go, we must just get your take on what's going on with the GAA at the moment. Are you excited to get back involved with the club? Is this a good time for the club player, or are you looking at the train of the inter-county season coming down the line and thinking to yourself that the club season around the country could be a small bit affected by this compact calendar we now have at the end of the year?
Yeah, no, listen, you have to take it for what it is. Like, it's been what could you do? I think the GAA played a blinder in this, and like, we've, I think, 3 club championship games coming up, and starting around the 2nd or 3rd of August, followed by a knockout game, and then either a quarter final or a relegation. So we're guaranteed to have 5 serious matches, probably over, I don't know how many weeks, a couple of weeks. I'm not sure all the games in a row or that, but probably, I suppose, 6 or 7 weeks. So, like, what else could they do? I think this is brilliant, because you have 2 windows. You're all together as club players in one window, and then off you go, and the county players can go off and play their county championship then in October. So I think if it works out like that, where we've the club players for the full duration of this club championship, I think it'll be wonderful. People probably look at it and say it's a short window, but if you look at the inter-county game as well, like, if it's knockout, which we'd expect it will be, they play 1 game that could be out, So I think the club players in Kilkenny, I think we're after getting a fantastic championship, considering the year that we have.
How have the Tullaroan hurlers been keeping sharp over the last few months?
You're tipping away there with a few plans, and nothing too hectic. Like, it's you're trying to get the balance. Like, when John Horan came out in the Sunday games was the first time, it probably looked like there was all over, that to be no kind of a championship this year until the social distance and measures were gone, or there was a vaccine in. So I suppose I kind of lost a bit of hope that time. And listen, and I fully understood the reasons why. So kind of laid off a little bit, just kind of tipped around, 1 or 2 runs a week maybe. But since the word came back that it's back on, yeah, we're kind of, I think the whole country, every club player's back on now. There was a lot of panicking. Like, I was on to Marlies, make sure and get yogurts in the shop and this week, and start drinking water again in bed early. So I'd say there was a lot of diet plans now looked at there once the word came out that the hurling was back on. But we were tipping away kind of more than anything.
Very good. Well, we must catch up again soon, especially once the club season gets... Sorry, go on, Tommy.
Just one more. I just didn't get the chance to put him in because, again, just a short thing. Willie Duggan from the rugby. I'd just like to make sure that he gets a mention there later on, because, again, I have no real background or wouldn't know much about the rugby game. But in Kilkenny, you talk about rugby in Kilkenny, you talk about Willie Duggan. He was famous around these parts. He had many caps, I think over 40 caps for Ireland. He played on a British and Lions tour in New Zealand. Supposedly wasn't one of the characters of the game when characters were characters. So just when the lads are chatting later on, he definitely has to be in with a shout.
Yeah, I think he's going to be on the list, actually. I think he's definitely going to be a big contender for the Kilkenny Mt Rushmore later on. Tommy Walsh, always a pleasure. Thanks a million for taking the call.
Yeah, thanks, Owen. Thanks, Nathan.